Cornered by criminal contempt charges, Rahul Gandhi expresses regret, admits that his remark on the Rafale verdict was distorted. Priyanka Gandhi Vadra and Smriti Irani fight over shoes in Amethi. The Congress General Secretary accuses the Union Minister of insulting the people of Amethi. Irani hits back, calling Rahul Gandhi a missing MP. Amit Shah campaigns for the BJP in West Bengal, accuses the state government of throttling democracy, promises to introduce a national register for citizens across India. The Delhi dilemma is finally over. The Congress ends all speculation of an alliance with the Aam Aadmi Party, fielding 6 out of 7 candidates. The BJP fields 4 sitting MPs. And another old-timer betrays the BJP. Yashwant Sinha will campaign for the Trinamool Congress in this election. The second phase of polling ended last week, and we're looking forward to the third one in less than 24 hours from now. Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of India Election Watch. I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay, and this is the only show that gives you all the clear, precise updates and unbiased analysis. We are bringing objectivity back to news, and we wrap up the election day in less than 30 minutes for you. Let's start with the very latest. The third phase of election is going to be held tomorrow, but politicians continue to crisscross the length and breadth of India. Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke at 4 rallies in 2 states, Maharashtra and Rajasthan. Together, they sent 71 lawmakers to the Lok Sabha. BJP President Amit Shah is campaigning in West Bengal. He led 4 rallies there. West Bengal is a high-value eastern state, 42 seats in all from here. The Congress president campaigned in the Gandhi bastions today. Rahul Gandhi was in Amethi and Rai Bareli. These are the only seats, 2 seats that the Congress won in Uttar Pradesh the last time around. The state has 80 in all. Let's start with what the Prime Minister said. He was in Maharashtra. He took on the Congress party over the issue of national security. He said that the UPA government was timid, and it was only the BJP with its bold approach that was able to curb terrorism in India.
आज हर आतंकी को पता है कि अगर देश के किसी हिस्से में बम धमाका किया तो ये मोदी है। ये उन्हें पाताल में भी खोजकर सजा देगा और उनके आकाओं को भी खत्म करके रहेगा।
Rahul Gandhi was campaigning in Amethi and Rai Bareli, but in New Delhi, he admitted to misquoting the Supreme Court on the Rafale verdict. Last week, he'd said that the Supreme Court had agreed to his Chaukidar Chor Hai allegation. The BJP then sued him for contempt, and now the Congress president has expressed regret. Do note that it's not an apology, just an expression of regret. And then on the campaign trail, Rahul Gandhi went back to attacking the Prime Minister in the same way.
नरेंद्र मोदी ने सिर्फ हिंदुस्तान की जनता से चोरी नहीं की है भाइयों बहनों, सबसे ज्यादा चोरी चौकीदार ने आप लोगों से की है। पिछले 5 साल में जो भी हमने आपके लिए किया, नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने आपसे छीना।
Meanwhile, his sister Priyanka Gandhi Vadra launched into a verbal duel with Smriti Irani today, calling her an outsider. She slammed the BJP for stalling development projects in Amethi. Listen to Priyanka Gandhi.
यहाँ पे सबसे अजीब बात तो मुझे ये लगी कि ये स्मृति ईरानी जी यहाँ आई और उन्होंने जूते बांटे लोगों को, ये कहने के लिए कि इनके पास जूते भी नहीं है पहनने। ये सोच रही है कि राहुल जी का अपमान कर रही हैं। ये कर रही है अमेठी की जनता का अपमान। हम लोग का हो रहा है। अमेठी की जनता ने कभी किसी से भीख नहीं मांगी है, कभी किसी से भीख नहीं मांगी है। अमेठी और रायबरेली की जनता ने कभी किसी से भीख नहीं मांगी। जो आया है उनके सामने आदर के साथ आया है।
Smriti Irani was quick to issue a rebuttal. She called Rahul Gandhi a missing MP. She accused the Gandhi family of keeping Amethi backward.
जहाँ तक बात अमेठी में उन गरीब नागरिकों की है जिनके पास पहनने को जूता नहीं था, तो कृपया अगर उनमें थोड़ी सी भी शर्म या मानवता हो तो जाकर हरिहरपुर में देख लें कि सच क्या है। लेकिन हरिहरपुर में जाकर देखने के लिए पहले लापता सांसद से पूछना पड़ेगा उनको कि हरिहरपुर है कहाँ। तो मेरा बस इतना ही मानना है कि लापता सांसद को जनता जान चुकी है और कमल का बटन दबाना ठान चुके हैं।
The big development from the national capital: after weeks of toing and froing, the Congress has decided to rely on its old guard in Delhi. Today, the party released the names of 6 out of 7 candidates for the Delhi Lok Sabha seats. Tomorrow is the last day for filing nominations from Delhi. Who are the candidates? Former Chief Minister Sheila Dikshit. She will contest from North East Delhi. The prestigious New Delhi seat goes to former Union Minister Ajay Maken. Former lawmakers JP Agrawal and Mahabal Mishra are contesting from Chandni Chowk and West Delhi Lok Sabha seats.
एक तरह से अच्छा भी लग रहा है और उम्मीद नहीं थी कि ऐसा होगा, तो है ये पार्टी ने मेरे पर जिम्मेदारी दी, इसको निभाने की पूरी कोशिश करूंगी।
Working President of Delhi Congress Rajesh Lilothia will fight for Northwest Delhi. It's a reserve seat. Arvinder Lovely, the current chief, will contest from East Delhi. The Congress is yet to announce its candidate for South Delhi. Now, the Congress and the Aam Aadmi Party were negotiating for an alliance. The AAP is said to have demanded a larger alliance. They wanted an alliance in 18 seats, including Delhi, Haryana and Chandigarh. But the Congress has finally decided to go it alone. And this will be a boost for the BJP's campaign. The anti-BJP vote will be split between the Aam Aadmi Party and the Congress. The AAP has already named its 7 candidates for Delhi. Their list comprises Atishi Marlena from East Delhi, Raghav Chadda from South Delhi, Dilip Pandey from North East Delhi, among others. The BJP too has announced its list for 4 candidates at least, and this is a list of high-profile leaders: Harshvardhan from Chandni Chowk, Manoj Tiwari from North East Delhi, former Chief Minister Sahib Singh Verma's son Pravesh from West Delhi, and Ramesh Biduri from South Delhi. Soon after the Congress announced the candidates, the Aam Aadmi Party targeted Congress for weakening the opposition to the BJP. What looked like an all against the BJP fight is now a 3-cornered race with veterans from both the national parties in the fray. The poll scene in the national capital is looking very exciting at this moment. In a few hours from now, phase 3 of the Lok Sabha election will begin. 115 constituencies in 13 states and union territories will choose their representatives. All 26 Lok Sabha seats from Gujarat will vote tomorrow. The BJP had won all of them in 2014. They're expected to keep most of them this time. Like Gujarat, Kerala will also choose all its parliamentarians in phase 3, 20 seats in all. There are some very prominent candidates in the fray. Let's look at the big battles of the third phase of this election. First on our list is the tight battle in Gulbarg in Karnataka. Senior Congress leader Mallikarjun Kharge hoping for a hat-trick this time. But reports indicate that this is a very close race. Kharge is facing Umesh Jadhav. Jadhav was in the Congress until very recently. He has now joined the BJP. Jadhav belongs to the Banjara community. Now, the constituency has a significant population. He is banking on these community votes plus the BJP's traditional vote bank to cause a major upset. That said, Kharge will still start as a favourite. He's a Congress veteran. He says that there has been a systematic effort from Gully to Delhi, as he puts it, to defeat him. He has to counter rival factions within the Congress party. The Veera Shaivat Lingayat community is said to be unhappy with him. Kharge will be hoping that the Dalit and Muslim vote bank of the Congress will come to his rescue. Second on our list, Pilibhit in Uttar Pradesh. The BJP's Varun Gandhi is taking on Hemraj Verma of Samajwadi Party. The mother-son duo of Varun Gandhi and Menaka Gandhi have swapped seats this time. Last time, Menaka won both from Pilibhit by 3 lakh votes. In fact, Menaka Gandhi has won every election from Pilibhit since 1989. She's represented this constituency for 30 years. Now, her son has taken it, at least the ticket. But for a constituency with such a high-profile candidate, Pilibhit does not have a university, not even a university. Students have to travel to Bareilly for university education. Connectivity is poor. Unemployment is a major issue. Varun Gandhi has campaigned aggressively across villages in this constituency. His challenger is no pushover though. Gathbandhan candidate Hemraj Verma. He represented the Barkhera Assembly constituency as an MLA. Now Barkhera falls in the Pilibhit seat. the Lok Sabha seat. He is credited with improving the infrastructure in this region. A tight race, this one. Number 3 on our list is the battle in Baramati in Maharashtra, another family bastion. Baramati has stayed with the Pawar family since 1991, almost 3 decades again. Supriya Sule, Sharad Pawar's daughter and political heir, is looking for a hat-trick here. She has been very active in parliament. The anti-incumbency against the BJP government at the state and central level is likely to work in her favour, but the BJP has a clear strategy to make it hard for Supriya Sule. The party has engineered a series of defections from the Congress. Taking on Sule is a political newcomer, Kanchal Rahul Kul. Kul comes from a political family. Her father-in-law was a Pawar loyalist once. It may not be easy for Supriya Sule because the arithmetic is in NDA's favour this time. Since 2014, the BJP Shiv Sena combined have won a host of assembly elections under the Baramati seat. But Supriya Sule should start as a hot favourite here. Fourth on the list of the big battles is the prestige battle in Guwahati in Assam. It's being dubbed as the Battle of the Queens, the BJP's Queen Oja versus the Congress's Bobita Sharma. The BJP has overlooked the 3-time sitting MP from here to allot the ticket to Queen Oja. Oja was a student activist. She took part in the Assam agitation in the 1980s. She was in the Assam Gana Parishad then. She was also the mayor of Guwahati for 2 years. She is fairly popular. Her biggest worry is the Citizenship Amendment Bill. It's a bill that is being pushed by the BJP, and it's a bill that has sparked a lot of anger in this region. Her opponent is also a local favourite. Congress's Bobita Sharma won a beauty pageant in the 1980s. She then taught history in college before joining politics. Oja has spoken about development in a campaign about water, roads, drainage. This constituency is roiled with basic problems. This one again, a very close fight. And last on today's list is the constituency which is a crucial marker, Surat in Gujarat. Sitting MP Darshana Jardosh of the BJP takes on Ashok Adewara of the Congress. Remember, Gujarat is the Prime Minister's home state. In most constituencies, the BJP should start on the front foot here, but Surat could be a very, very close race. Surat is a very important city. It is the second largest city in Gujarat after Ahmedabad. It's a hub for textiles and diamond processing. Jobs and businesses in Surat were hit hard by demonetization, and more significantly, the goods and services tax. Here's where the 2017 assembly elections come into discussion. Despite severe job losses, Surat voted for the BJP in 2017. It's the BJP's strength versus the discontent over job losses. Phase 3 has some very interesting contests lined up. On Know Your Candidate today, the spotlight is on Mulayam Singh Yadav, Samajwadi Party patriarch and 6-time Lok Sabha member. Mulayam Singh Yadav is contesting from his family bastion of Mainpuri. He is a postgraduate, a 3-time Chief Minister from Uttar Pradesh. He was elected 6 times to the Lok Sabha, twice from Azamgarh, 4 times from Mainpuri. In 2014, Mulayam Singh Yadav won from both these seats, but he vacated the Mainpuri seat. Let's look at his Lok Sabha record. His attendance was a whopping 81%, not bad at all. He has taken part in 44 debates, that's way below the national average. He has asked no questions. He introduced no private member bills in this session. He is 79 years old. Mulayam Singh Yadav entered politics at the age of 15. He gets much of his resilience, they say, from years of training in akhadas. He even had a spell at the centre as Defence Minister when H.D. Deve Gowda was Prime Minister of India. Mulayam Singh Yadav formed the Samajwadi Party in 1992. Over the years, he's partnered with the BJP, the Congress, and now with bitter foe and arch-rival Mayawati to oust the BJP from Uttar Pradesh. Mulayam Singh Yadav has a steady vote base of Muslims, Yadavs and OBCs. After the demolition of the Babri Masjid, he partnered with Mayawati. He's been a vocal opponent of the demolition of this masjid. In this election, he's mostly kept a low profile. His son Akhilesh Yadav has taken over the reins of his party. Mulayam Singh Yadav says this is the last election he will contest. Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Delhi, Chhattisgarh and Gujarat. What is common between these states? These 5 states were swept by the BJP in 2014. They won by large margins. In Uttar Pradesh, the BJP won a record 71 out of 80 seats. In Chhattisgarh, they won 10 out of 11 seats. In Rajasthan, Delhi and Gujarat, the BJP scored cent% all the seats on offer. So can they repeat the magic of 2014 in northern India? Maybe not. This is not a wave election. There will be some, if not substantial, losses in all these states. Everything then hinges on how big the losses are and how the BJP makes up for them. So what is their plan? On India Election Watch today, we break down the math behind the BJP's election strategy. Back in March, BJP President Amit Shah had given a clue. He'd said that his party is looking east to offset any losses. It's a well-thought-out plan. The BJP is still eyeing a clear majority, and Amit Shah feels that they can surprise the opposition on at least 35 to 40 seats in these states. And here's the plan. In West Bengal, the BJP is aiming for at least 23 out of 42 seats. In the Northeast, their aim is to score 20 to 21 seats. The total number of seats from the northeastern states is 25. So they are hoping to get a major chunk of these. In the state of Odisha, again, the BJP trying very hard there with all the rallies by the Prime Minister and Amit Shah. The BJP hoping for substantial gains from Odisha. The party president said that they will be in a position to form the next state government. Odisha is also voting for assembly elections simultaneously. These states send a total of 88 lawmakers to parliament. That's not a mean figure. But what is the basis of the BJP's optimism? 35 to 40 seats. How did they fare in all these states in 2014? In the last election, the BJP had won only 11 out of these 88 seats. Clearly, there is scope for improvement. The BJP's look-east strategy has become more evident in the past few months. Amit Shah was in West Bengal today. Prime Minister Modi himself has held more than 20 public meetings in the last few months. The party has been raising its campaign pitch against Mamata Banerjee in West Bengal and Naveen Patnaik in Odisha. The aim is to turn this election in these states into a direct battle between the BJP and regional heavyweights in these states. Plus, there's talk of post-poll alliances with KCR in Telangana and Jagan Mohan Reddy in Andhra Pradesh. Both these leaders are expected to sweep their respective states. On Did You Know, we talk about the transgender voters of India. How many of them vote? How inclusive is the system? Here's a quick look. It took 47 years since independence, 42 years since the first general election. Transgenders were granted voting rights in India only in 1994. It was in 2009 that the Election Commission had allowed transgenders to vote by marking their gender as other. Before that, they either voted as a man or a woman. In 2014, the Supreme Court granted them recognition as the third gender, so now members of the third gender can vote in their own identity. But laws and legal guarantees apart, has the Indian democracy been inclusive of transgenders? The numbers tell a sad story. According to the Election Commission data, the number of voters enrolled in the other category is now over 38,000. It's just an increase of 15,000 from 2014. Let's dig into the numbers a bit more. According to the 2011 census, the number of transgender people in India is around 4.9 lakhs. And these are conservative estimates. Since there is a stigma around transgenders, the official numbers do not give a fair picture. Even considering the stigma, the number of registered transgender votes is less than 10% of the number of transgenders in India. Now, what is the reason for this exclusion? One, the official process. It's a tedious process to furnish documents to validate a transgender person's identity. A number of documents are needed to establish the identity. There are many members of the other sex who have registered themselves as male or female in the past. Changing their gender in the voter ID requires them to go through more process. Transgenders also do not possess a lot of official documents. Studies show that many of them run away from their homes fearing discrimination at an early age. Besides, there are no plans to give identities to those who had undergone gender change operations before the 2014 Supreme Court judgment. The problems that transgenders face are similar to the problems they face when they apply for passports. Medical certificates of gender transition are sought despite the landmark Nalsa judgment of 2014. The judgment notes that self-identifying a transgender is not linked only to the case of medical transition. So have transgenders represented any constituency in India so far? The short answer is yes. Shabnam Mosi Bano was elected as MLA from Sholapur in Madhya Pradesh way back in 1998. Just a year before Shabnam's victory, Kamala Jan, another transgender person, was elected as mayor of the Katni town, also in Madhya Pradesh. But Kamala's election was rejected by the High Court. The reason was this: the mayor of Katni town is reserved for a woman candidate. That seat is reserved. Talk about sensitivity and discrimination. This election, coming as it does after the landmark LGBT judgment, there are many candidates from the third sex in the fray. The Aam Aadmi Party has fielded a transgender candidate from Prayagraj. In Mumbai, Tamil Nadu and Kerala, there are many independent candidates who are from the third sex. So things are indeed changing. It is often said that the inclusion of the transgender community would not change the scene very much. After all, 4.9 lakh voters in a democracy of over 130 crore people does not count for very much. But identity is a matter of choice, and in a free country, we cannot give all the citizens the right to vote, irrespective of caste, creed, identities and other criteria. Then it's not a democracy. And that is the logic behind this. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Election Watch. Thanks very much for watching, and keep your comments coming in. We'll see you tomorrow, same time.